Hello my lovelies, welcome to another video with me, Stanley. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Gilded Tarot Royale Deck. This is one of my favorite decks, so yeah, let's jump right in. So this is the first deck that I went out and intuitively picked out. I spent about 45 minutes probably in front of about 100 plus tarot decks at Barnes & Noble's, and I'm so glad that I got this one. It's still to this day one of my favorites. I have been doing tarot for about 2 years now, and yeah, I've really enjoyed using this deck. I still use it as kind of a backup deck. Yes, let's take a look. We have a nice little magnetic strip on the side here. The box is really nice. Appreciate the effort put into that. Like the little mirroring of the images there on the inside and the top of the deck of the cards, and we'll take a look at that here in just a minute. But I want to first take a little peek at the guidebook. I really highly recommend this deck if you are first starting out in tarot, because the guidebook is excellent in explaining to you the basics of the cards and what tarot is. It goes through explanations of the minor arcana, and then it kind of takes you through the major arcana and the fool's journey. So if you don't really know a whole lot about tarot and you want to learn, this is really, it's a beginner friendly in its wording as well. It doesn't have a whole lot of hard to understand language or words that people first starting out in the spiritual community might have trouble really grasping onto. I know there are some things that I read that I'm like, I don't even know, this is really way out there for me, but this one I love. We do have nice big images on the inside of the book of what each card looks like. They are in black and white, but I'm sure that does help with saving a little bit on the cost for printing and keeping the cost a little bit lower for you. I believe at the time that I bought this, it was $29.99. Pretty reasonable price for a tarot deck, especially a beginner's one. But one thing that I do appreciate too about it is that I've not ever seen this in any other decks or guidebooks, but it gives examples in the descriptions of how it might connect to another type of card in the deck, because there are a lot of similar energies, especially when you're looking at the elements like earth, fire, air, water, and then you start to look at astrology, because each card has a different astrological sign kind of attached to it, right? And so yeah, when you start to really connect the dots on things, it starts to get pretty interesting when you do your readings. It's another reason why I really like to use different multiple decks rather in a reading, because it really does just open you up to a whole new level of understanding and insight. So yeah, the only thing I'll say about this that I'm not so crazy about as far as the guidebook goes is that it doesn't give you any quick keywords or phrases to look at. You kind of have to scan the whole thing if you're wanting just a quick refresh of what the card means, which can take you a little bit longer during a reading if you're just wanting to quickly get a refresher for what that card means and you're not trying to read the whole thing. This doesn't really do that, and it doesn't give an exact reversal meaning, although it does tell you beware of on just about every card, which kind of alludes to the whole fact of what the reversal of that card means. And it talks too in the beginning about reversals if you're unsure about whether or not you want to read reversals. That's really up to you. There are a lot of people that don't. I personally do, because again, I think it adds a little more depth to the reading. So yeah, anyways, let's move on and take a look at the actual cards. Now, as I've said before, this deck I have had for a couple of years now, and it's been pretty worn. I have rearranged them back into the original order, more or less, so that we can do a nice quick flip through. But you can see that this is not a new deck. You can see how the edges have worn a little bit. Still in pretty good condition. I personally don't mind a little bit of a worn deck because they can be a little bit easier to use. Sometimes the newer decks are a little bit too stiff or something like that, and sometimes they're too glossy. This one I think is the perfect amount of glossiness. I wouldn't want it to be any more glossy than what it is now. Kind of move it around so you can see the sheen. Sometimes when they're too glossy, it's really hard to shuffle because you can't get the cards to separate very well. So that's a really important feature. And I love the size. It's a perfect size. It's pretty standard tarot deck size. There are some that are too big to even hold in your hand, and that can be a little bit frustrating. You've got to figure out other ways to read them. But another thing I will say too that I appreciate about this is how straight the deck is. After so much use, I have a lot of decks that will kind of do a bendy thing after a while, and then they don't lay so flat, and that really bothers me. And this one it really holds its shape, and I appreciate that. I don't shuffle my decks, in this way where you bend them, because I don't like how it messes up the cards. So that helps to preserve that a little bit. Just a little tip. I think it would have been nice if they had some kind of edging. You see some of those decks have the shiny edges or whatever to kind of protect the cards over time and add a little bit more visual appeal, which would have been a little bit nicer for this deck. But again, maybe that's something that just does to keep it a little bit more affordable, which again, I appreciate that. So let's do a little quick flip through. If you want to speed this up, you can, but I'm going to try to go a little bit slow so that we can just take a look at all the cards. Really love the imagery on each of these cards. They're very detailed, and they have a really kind of timeless classic feel to them while also being a bit modern at the same time. They're very relatable, which to me is an extremely important thing when it comes to tarot decks, because there are some decks that I have gotten. Let me zoom in a little bit on this for you. There are some decks that I have gotten where I'm just not as impressed with the images when it comes to how they resonate to the meaning of the card. And for that reason, I end up not really using the deck very much. So this one, yeah, the images are very symbolic, and they tell you a lot about the symbolism of each one in the guidebook, so that's really nice to read. I love the details. Some people I've spoken to who do tarot, everyone has that different style of art that you're drawn to again, and some people like to use decks that are a little bit more minimalistic. I tend to be drawn to ones like this that have a little bit more details in the images. I especially love it when they include animals, the elements, and when it includes people, because some decks, again, it's just hard to relate to the images, and here you can really get a feel of the energy before you really even dive into the meaning of the card, which is really what tarot is all about. It's all about tapping into your intuition and seeing what messages are coming forth for you, right? Tarot is all about energy reading. A lot of people think it's about telling the future, and you can tap into, future timelines, but the thing is we still have the free will every single moment to do or not to do, right? You always have the free will to choose in that moment what you're going to do. So it's hard to know what's going to go on in the future, and sometimes that can be a little bit damaging to your mental state in the present. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's really good to know too much about what's going on in the future. So for me, I really like to use tarot as a way to guide myself in the here and the now, and to really look and see where the next steps I need to take are, and read my own energy, read the energy of other people and situations that are happening in my life and that sort of thing. I really don't care to ask a whole lot of future questions, although I do slip them in from time to time. And I don't really like yes or no questions, because sometimes that can be really disappointing. or hard to determine what the card is saying. So yeah, the major arcana is all about the Fool's journey, and basically you're the Fool and you start off not really knowing anything, and you kind of get to the end of your journey, you know, having completed a cycle and learned all the lessons and whatnot. So the major arcana, every card takes you through each step of your journey through life. And then when you get to the minor arcana, which are the ones that have the pentacles, cups, swords, and wands, that speaks more about the people that are in your life and the smaller day-to-day situations that you might face. Whereas the major arcana really looks at the major events in your life, right? Major, minor, makes sense. So yeah, this has been one of my favorite decks. Again, love the images, really resonate with this deck, and will continue to use it. If you're interested in purchasing this, I will leave a link down in the comments to where you can go and check it out. It's probably available at your local bookstore as well. It's where I found mine. And it shuffles pretty nicely. Again, like I said, I don't like to bend the cards too much. However, when I'm first starting out with a new deck and it's a little bit stiff, I will do a couple of these shuffles to just loosen up the cards, because they get, again, they start out a little stiff sometimes depending on the quality. See, I'm not even good at that kind of a shuffle because I don't do it. And you can see how it kind of bent the cards a little bit. So yeah, not my favorite way to shuffle. I personally like to do this kind of side style shuffle where they fall into place and I'm not bending them too much. Like that. And then after I cut the deck in whichever way I see fit, then I'll usually do a side shuffle like this. Just a quick little tip for how you can shuffle and pull your cards. There's so many different ways you can shuffle. You can also, if you're not into that type of shuffle, or you're just having a hard time getting the grip of shuffling, you can just kind of move them around back and forth a little and then fan them out and intuitively pick your cards in that way. I have a couple of larger decks that I can't really hold in my hands, and I use this method for it, but that's not really my favorite. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for tuning in. I will leave a link in the description on where you can go to purchase this deck if you so choose. I do have so many other decks that I would love to share with you all, so if you have a recommendation or a request for one, please do put it in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Namaste, love and light.